Could this attack on Sumy have been stopped? Could those innocent people, children, parents, neighbors, still be alive today? Why did no one act in time, even when the danger signs were clear? Why did Ukraine's warning systems fail when every alarm should have meant action? Why didn't Russia stop before launching that missile? And why didn't Europe or America push harder to prevent it? This isn't just a mistake, it is a failure by everyone involved. Sumy was once a quiet Ukrainian city where life moved gently. Children played in the streets, neighbors greeted each other, and families shared meals together. Then, one day, everything changed in a split second. At 10:30 a.m. on March 1st, 2023, a ballistic missile struck a residential neighborhood in Sumy. In an instant, more than 30 lives were lost, and many more were hurt. Imagine children on their way home from school and families cooking dinner. Then, without warning, the sky exploded into chaos. Thick smoke filled the air as the missile hit its mark. People were left in shock, asking, where was the protection? Why didn't anyone stop this missile before it tore their lives apart? This devastating moment turned a peaceful morning into a nightmare, creating questions that demand answers. Ukraine has been fighting a relentless war and has received huge support from the West in the form of money, weapons, and advanced technology. Yet, how was Sumy left so vulnerable? Some believe that Ukraine's leadership did not heed the repeated warnings. Intelligence services had sent early signals, messages that said danger was coming, but those warnings went unanswered. Air defenses in many smaller cities were weak or outdated, while resources may have been poured into frontline areas. Little attention was given to protecting civilian communities. Was it because the government was too focused on battles far from home? Or perhaps the leaders were caught off guard, unprepared for the rapid pace of modern warfare? Some even wonder if there was a degree of indifference, an inability or unwillingness to protect every life, no matter how far from the battlefield. In Sumy, the consequences are devastating. Innocent lives were sacrificed because of failures that stretch from poor planning to missed opportunities. This is not just a strategic error. It is a moral failure that questions the very foundation of Ukraine's duty to its people. Russia claims the missile was aimed at a military target. But when we look at satellite images, witness accounts, and on-the-ground reports, a stark contradiction emerges. The missile hit homes, not military installations. No soldiers were present, only families living their lives in a quiet neighborhood. This leads us to ask, was this simply a tragic mistake, or was it a calculated act to terrorize civilians? If it was an error, the cost is unbearably high. If it was intentional, then it stands as a war crime, a deliberate act of terror against innocence. Russia knew the risk of hitting a civilian area, yet they launched that missile anyway. By targeting Sumy, Russia chose fear over honor, terror over restraint. This act is not just an outcome of conflict. It is a message of intimidation, a signal that violence is acceptable if it serves a larger strategic goal. And in doing so, it leaves us with yet another question. Is this really war, or has it become indiscriminate terror? Europe and America declared time and again that they stood by Ukraine. They sent weapons, provided financial support, and made public promises meant to deter aggression. Yet, when Sumy was struck, many people left wondering, where was that help? Were those promises simply words, or were they real actions that could have stopped the missile? It seems that in the critical moments, Western support was too slow, or perhaps insufficient. Leaders on both sides exchanged stern words, imposed sanctions, and assured solidarity. But these gestures did not stop the missile from falling, nor did they save innocent lives. Words and money can comfort us, but they do not always act in the split seconds needed to avert disaster. This raises another pressing question. Did our allies underestimate the threat? Was there an over-reliance on promises and diplomatic statements, while immediate action was lacking? The tragedy of Sumy reveals a deep gap between what was promised and what was delivered when it mattered most. The missile attack on Sumy did not materialize from thin air. Spy satellites had detected unusual movements. Military systems captured signals, warnings that something was wrong. Even ordinary Ukrainian citizens sensed the impending danger and tried to alert their communities. Yet, despite these warnings, no one acted quickly enough. The missile was launched before a coordinated response could be arranged. Why did the warnings fall on deaf ears? Was it a failure of intelligence or a hesitation rooted in bureaucracy? Perhaps the decision-makers thought it won't happen today, or believed that the threat was overblown. This inaction allowed the missile to hit its mark, and the lives of Sumy's citizens were forever altered. Every mischance, every delay in reaction, builds the tragic narrative of that day. The failure was not just about a system failing, it was about human oversight, political missteps, and, ultimately, a fatal lack of urgency. Today, the survivors of Sumy carry a heavy burden. A father grieves the loss of his daughter. A young child, once full of promise, now struggles to walk with crutches. Homes that once echoed with laughter have been reduced to rubble, and schools stand empty where hope once resided. These are not just statistics or news headlines. They are human lives, each carrying deep scars, both seen and unseen. The pain of loss, the trauma of witnessing such horror, and the struggle to rebuild in the midst of devastation. These are the true costs of the attack. For the people of Sumy, every day is a reminder of what has been lost. Their grief, their struggle, and their fight to reclaim a sense of normalcy should matter to the entire world, especially to us in Europe. Because when our neighbors suffer, the ripple effects reach far beyond borders. Europe has long prided itself on diplomacy, on finding solutions through dialogue and negotiation. But what use is diplomacy when human lives are at stake and missiles are falling? Despite all the talks, meetings, and high-level condemnations, diplomacy did not stop the attack on Sumy. Many hoped that peace talks and sanctions would serve as enough deterrence. Yet, the gap between diplomatic language and decisive action proved fatal. Diplomacy became a series of delayed gestures, offered only after it was too late to save those lives. How can we rely solely on words when words do not stop missiles? This failure of diplomacy is not just a missed opportunity. It is a fundamental flaw in how we handle crisis. It is a call for urgent reform, real, enforceable measures that protect people, rather than temporary promises that dissipate in the face of immediate danger. In the aftermath of the tragedy, one resounding question remains: where is the justice? When civilians are killed, there must be accountability. Yet, in the case of Sumy, no one has been held responsible so far. The United Nations and other international bodies have condemned the attack, but legal action has yet to follow. No arrests, no trials, and no firm acknowledgement of guilt have been made. The people of Sumy are not looking for empty promises. They demand truth, accountability, and action. If such attacks continue with impunity, the message is clear: human life is expendable. Without accountability, the cycle of violence only deepens, and future tragedies become ever more likely. It is essential that the international community transform condemnation into concrete steps to ensure that no more lives are lost to unchecked aggression. Many in Europe might see the crisis in Ukraine as distant, confined to another part of the world. But think again, what if your own city were next? What if refugees keep pouring into Europe and instability spreads across borders? This isn't just a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It is a struggle for human rights, dignity, and peace. Every missile that falls, every life taken, sends ripples that can affect us all. Europe must not only stand in solidarity with Ukraine, but also take decisive action to prevent further tragedies. We have a moral responsibility, shaped by our history, our values, and our commitment to human rights, to ensure that such failures never happen again. If we ignore these events today, we risk becoming bystanders to future disasters, with our own neighborhoods paying the price. It is time for Europe to transform empathy into action and support policies that truly safeguard human life. So, we return to the fundamental question: could this attack on Sumy have been stopped? If yes, then who let it happen? If no, then what must change to ensure it doesn't happen again? The tragedy of Sumy cannot be undone, but it can serve as a stark lesson for the future. For Ukraine, it means building a robust defense to protect every citizen. For Russia, it means facing the consequences of a deliberate strategy that targets civilians. For the West, both Europe and America, it means converting promises into prompt, effective action. We must ask ourselves, how do we improve intelligence systems, shorten response times, and ensure that every warning is taken seriously? How do we hold our leaders accountable so that no more communities suffer such devastating losses? This is more than a question of policy. It is a question of humanity. Next time, when a missile is about to fall, may our actions be swift and decisive so that this never happens again. Because true justice isn't handed out freely. It is demanded by those who refuse to stand idly by while lives are destroyed. Every moment, Every lost life in Sumy is a reminder of our shared responsibility. It is up to us, as global citizens, as Europeans, as defenders of human rights, to ensure that the tragedy of Sumy becomes a catalyst for change.